I think my roommate might be a monster, but at least she pays her bills on time. It was midday and I thought she might be asleep. I grabbed a couple of double A batteries and set them near her door so I wouldn't have to go in and change them. After almost an hour, she did not emerge from the room and the beeping continued. It was a very loud chirp, and regardless of replacing them or not, I wanted to at least stop the thing from making that racket, so I made the mistake of going into Lania's room. For the first time since the incident, I walked in on her. I knew it was a bad idea, but I slowly approached the door and knocked several times. No response was forthcoming, so I knocked again and nervously called out, "Lania, are you here?" Still no response. I called out louder than before. "Come on, Lania, you don't hear that sound." "That's the carbon monoxide detector. It will keep doing that unless we change the battery. I have them right here. Please change them, or I can if you will let me in real quick." Once again, silence was all that responded. I tried the door and, to my surprise, it was unlocked. The room was very dark. The windows had been covered up with blackout curtains or something. I turned on my phone's flashlight and shined it briefly on the bed to check. It was empty. I looked up and saw in the corner of the room the blinking detector and the target of my uninvited intrusion into her room. I stepped forward and promptly tripped on something. It was a large duffel bag that was partially open. I knew I shouldn't, but I couldn't suppress the urge to investigate, so I shined my light on it and was confused when I saw a large assortment of name tags. Wallets, engraved jewelry, and various charms or mementos, all of which bore different names. None seemed to actually say Lania. I also saw that Ted Namatag again in here with the assortment of other named items. I was deeply disturbed by the implications of this grab bag of others' personal effects and did not like any of the scenarios it implied. I took a step back and almost jumped out of my skin when I heard a hiss and the striking of a glass wall and saw a row of terrariums that contained several large snakes. I knew she must have had one from before, but I didn't know she had this many. They seemed oddly perturbed and upset by my presence, and the one who made the sound had attacked the glass to try and reach me. I shuddered when I considered they might be venomous. I tried to catch my breath when my blood froze as I stood there hearing with distinct certainty a moving sound coming from the attached bathroom. It sounded like an enormous slithering sound like that of a snake, but far too large. I crept closer to the bathroom and heard a sickening crunching sound like bone being snapped in half. My heart was hammering in my chest and I couldn't move, but I saw a large shadow looming near the other side of the bathroom door. I covered my mouth and tried to slowly back out of the room. Suddenly, the door handle began to turn and I fell back into the dark corner of the room. The door didn't open just then. For whatever reason, the figure on the other side continued to slide around in the bathroom and another savage crunch was heard. I let out a controlled raspy gasp to not make too much noise, and I pressed my hands against the wall to steady myself. As I touched the wall, I felt something gross and sticky. I managed to sit upright and slowly step away from the wall, trying to be as quiet as I could. I gently reached back into my pocket to get my phone and turned to face the corner of the wall I had just been pressed up against. Once the light shone on the scene, I felt like I was going to be sick. The corner held an array of large bundles of meat still slicked with gore and wrapped in a large bundle of butcher's twine. I did not like the shape of the thing at all. The proportions were very large, but not so large as to be bovine or deer. Some seemed to be disturbingly suggestive in length and general outline to that of the human anatomy. I didn't know if the light was playing tricks on me, but I could have sworn I saw the outline of an entire human-sized femur and a partially flensed chunk of meat. I turned away in disgust at the smell and general horror of the scene and quickly crept towards the door. The handle once again jostled on the bathroom door, and this time it did start to open. I flung myself forward onto the ground and crawled under the bed. I held my breath but almost let out a gasp as I saw what appeared to be a partially eaten human head under the bed near where I was hiding. I almost screamed aloud when after a pause a scaled hand reached underneath the bed and groped for something near where I was. It reached for a moment and then grasped the half-eaten head and pulled it out. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. I simply waited in terrified suspense as I heard awful crunching and tearing sounds and the sucking guttural consumption of the morbid meal from a creature not fully used to chewing its food. I also saw under there, when I opened my eyes again, the discarded dishes from my dining set, caked in what looked alarmingly like dried blood. I lost track of the exact time I spent in that nightmare room, listening to the thing finish its morbid meal. Then somehow the slithering about the room stopped and I heard the soft padding of human feet and a sudden pressure on the bed above me as of someone sitting down. Daring to set my eyes ahead and look out slightly, I saw a normal-looking woman's feet, and I heard a soft sing-song humming of a song as a figure bent down and put shoes on and walked forward, and from the sounds of the door had departed the room. I let out a loud exhale of exhausted fear, and I fought the dueling urges to either cower under here for a bit longer or rush out of this nightmare room in a blind, frenzied panic, regardless of how close its horrifying occupant might still be. Tried to calm myself down, and eventually, after what may have been 2 or 3 minutes, I pulled myself from under the bed and rushed out of the room. I whirled back to close the door to Lania's room, and as the door clicked and my hand was still on the door, I heard a voice call out, "Is there something you need in my room?" I froze in place, terrified of turning around for fear of what I might see. I managed to spin my petrified body around, and I saw Lania. No monster, just Lania. She was fully dressed, no blood was covering her body, and no snakes writhed about. I stood there staring dumbly before her, stammering for an answer. Her eyes narrowed at my reaction, and I realized I needed to say something. I looked at the batteries still sitting by her door. I needed to change the batteries on your carbon monoxide detector. Almost on cue, the shrill beep was heard again to accentuate my point and give me what was at first a genuine answer to her question. She looked incredulous, but seemed to soften as she winced when she heard the shrill beep again, seemingly noticing now that I had pointed it out. "All right, I can see how that might be annoying. I am sorry, please allow me." She brushed past me back into her room, and after a minute the beeping was gone, she came back out and smiled at me. "Oh, I almost forgot here." She handed me an envelope. It contained an assortment of bills, many of which were stained with a disturbing dark brown color. In total, it looked to be close to $4,000. For rent and consider the rest extra for the batteries, she winked at me and brushed past me, and I stood there dumbfounded as I heard the front door open and close and a car leaving shortly thereafter. I have no idea what just happened or if what I experienced was real or a nightmare. I know now what I fear is likely the truth, but what did I really see? Whatever Lania is doing, or indeed whatever she might truly be, I do not know. But I do know that besides the mess and the eccentricities, she pays her bills on time. The awful nightmare of a serpentine woman hybrid who preys on men is damnably suggestive of the story of the demonic Lamia. I considered her name to Lania. No, just a coincidence, I'm sure, like that Ted who went missing. Maybe I will ask her about it later, but for now, I think I should deposit this money into my account and start a savings account. Perhaps I can afford to ask her to leave a little bit later. Yes, I think that would be the safer option. Demons can't be real, right? But homelessness sure is, and I mean, I am just being paranoid, right? Film part of the story tomorrow. Thank you for watching. Subscribe and follow my other socials.